Welcome everyone to BIBO Weekly. I'm Tracy S. Campbell, and today we are back on the virtual couch, and today we're having a conversation that is a much needed conversation, but unfortunately, it's a conversation that has been relegated to the background in light of the pandemic, and that's the conversation around opioid use, more specifically, opioid use disorder that a lot of individuals are suffering from right now. Joining me today on the virtual couch are three individuals that can speak about this subject from various angles. First, we're going to check in with Dr. Marina Castina. She is a hypnotherapist, energy healer, and coach who has a practice right here in the Chicagoland area. And so, Marina, thank you so much for joining us here on the virtual couch.
Thank you so much, Tracy, for having me, and thank you, everybody.
Yes, and Marina, you've been here with us a few times, so you're an old pro. So I thank you. I thank you once again for joining us.
Thank you.
Also joining us today, he is an author. He is a multiple Emmy award-winning producer, and I am so proud to say that not only is he an advisory board member to the BIBO Foundation, our very own 501c3, but he also is the recipient of the very first BIBO Awards Man of the Year, which I was so glad to present to him back in 2017, the amazing William Natale. Hey there, Bill. Good to have you here.
Good to be here. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. And I know you're going to share a lot around this topic and the great book that you have out right now that we're going to talk about in just a little bit.
Okay.
And also joining us here on the virtual couch, he is the founder of Another Chance Chicago, which is an organization that is helping teens, adolescents that are dealing with substance abuse issues, behavioral issues. And right now they're in 15 cities and growing. He left a career, a 20-year career in broadcasting to become an addictions counselor. And the rest is history. He's making a great impact on teens, and he's very much called upon, especially in the Chicagoland area, to help diagnose and assess the substance abuse issue with our teens. Max Knighton. Thank you so much, Max, for being here.
Tracy, it's a pleasure to be with you and the distinguished panel that you have as well.
I think it's a great panel, and you're a part of that. So thank you so much for being here this evening.
Sure, my pleasure.
So everyone, let's get into the conversation. Again, we're talking about opioid disorder use. It's prevalent. It's so prevalent that right now over 20 million Americans suffer from this disorder. I hate to say, but 1 in 4 opioid overdoses right now involve a teenager. And on top of all of that, everyone, not only are we dealing with those staggering statistics, but it's also disheartening that 2 out of every 3 adults that are suffering from this disorder right now started before the age of 25. What is an opioid? For those of you that may not know a lot about this, but are very curious, well, an opioid is a narcotic substance. It's generally used for pain management, but unfortunately, a lot of individuals are abusing this particular drug, and it can be literally a pain med, or it could also be an illicit drug such as heroin. So that kind of level sets where we are, everyone, and what we're going to be talking about today. Marina, I'm going to start with you. You are a hypnotherapist, you're an energy healer, you're a coach. And right now, during this pandemic, you're still seeing a lot of clients. Can you talk to us a little bit about what you do and how it may help someone that's struggling with opioid addiction?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, I just want to let you know that it is, the numbers are incredibly high. Pretty much every second person who comes to my office has some sort of drug addiction. And it's very scary to see how easy it is to find drugs in Chicago, prescribed or illegal drugs. It's very easy. So that's one issue. And also because of the cultural approach to giving pain medication right away for pretty much anything, right? That created that normalcy about it. And I think that hypnotherapy and energy work are two, of course, not in every case, but at least that's another option of addressing that problem, because literally everything starts with the mindset, with mind, and then our thoughts, and then the energy that we create about things, and the way we interact with the world. Because opioids are for pain, and pain,
Right.
even physical, usually has emotional foundation. So if we address the mind through hypnosis, subconscious mind, right, we can heal pain, chronic pain, with hypnosis very quickly, very often. And if we also work on people's energy to make the energy whole and powerful, that I found that is really, really useful.
And that's something that we don't hear a lot of. Many people, many of those that are watching right now are not familiar with hypnotherapy. And definitely they're not familiar with hypnotherapy as it relates to any form of addiction, in this case, opioid addiction. So we're going to check back in with you in a little bit, Dr. Marina, to have you elaborate a little bit more on that, because there could be folks right now watching us that want to find an alternative to pain meds, whether they're on opioids or not. They just want to find an alternative to taking pain meds. So we're going to check back in with you. Bill, I definitely want to touch base with you, because this is a subject that, if I can say, has hit closer to home than maybe some of the others here on the panel. If you're able, and if you're comfortable sharing how you have become very involved with this issue and why it has prompted you, Bill, to step forth and actually write a book about this subject matter.
Yeah, I got involved with it due to the fact that two of my children, not just one, but two of my four kids wound up getting caught up in opioid addiction. And it all starts out rather innocent in both cases. They were both bipolar. The other two children, the older girls, did not have any of the bipolar symptoms or problems. And so they were both on medications. The medications, if they don't work right, and probably Dr. Christina can verify this, if they're not working properly, then they have to be adjusted, and then they have to be, they have to be re-given in a sense of a new prescription that's given, or they're sort of moving the efficacy of the drugs,
right?
How strong they are, and that's personal to me, because two of the kids, were frankly on medications and developed addictions. Now, why did they develop addictions? Well, a couple of things. One, and this would be true of even somebody who's got tremendous back pain. I mean, I had to have back surgery back in 2005, and prior to that, I was on opioids myself in order to alleviate the pain. And then finally I had surgery, and thank God, I haven't had, but I mean, the pain can be excruciating at times. And that's usually how a lot of Americans, got sort of trapped into this. Yeah. They were given pain meds, or in the case of my kids, they were given meds for their bipolar situation. And then when they run out of their medication, then they're looking for alternative drugs, whether they're legal or not legal. They're looking for drugs to get them through. And it's really kind of a weird policy too. And I'm sure there are good reasons for it, but you run out of your meds, or you lose a few and you run out of your meds, you're not going to get any meds until a certain
time has passed. Right. Yeah.
So that almost like always leads to somebody going, well, I got to get fixed somehow. I mean, I got to
Exactly.
take care
And
of
it starts a vicious cycle, a very vicious cycle. And so I'm so sorry, Bill, that you had not one, but two children that got into this, like you said, in an innocent fashion. They were dealing with a medical issue that was being treated by a drug, a pain med, essentially. And unfortunately, it started this downward spiral. We're going to check back in with you, Bill, to hear more of that and to allow you to elaborate more on that, because we hope that you are enjoying today's powerful conversation around the opioid crisis and opioid drug abuse. We're going to get back to the virtual couch and continue this conversation right after this. Now, let's get back to the virtual couch conversation in progress all around the issue of opioid use and abuse amongst adults and teens. Today, Max, I want to bring you into the conversation as well, in hearing what Dr. Marina does with patients that she sees, clients that she sees, hearing Bill, who is a parent that had two children that, again, unfortunately got into this downward spiral of opioid use, starting out seemingly innocent. What are you seeing in the work that you do with Another Chance Chicago?
First thing I want to say, Tracy, is that I wish that Bill's children had met Dr. Marina and perhaps had an opportunity to explore an alternative therapy.
Yeah.
There are numerous therapies out here that are available. And Another Chance Chicago, we definitely do think outside of the box when it comes to that. Unfortunately, this crisis began so long ago. And it's just now really becoming recognized. Mm-hmm. But it began really back in the 50s and 60s. And, it just kind of escalated over the years to the point that it's actually being noticed and things are being done about it. For many years, funds were cut in the substance use disorder treatment arena. It was always the last thing to get any additional funding and the first thing to get cut on the politicians' budgets. Mm-hmm. What we see as far as adolescents go is it's evident in the headlines today. Last night, Congressman Bobby Rush held a town hall meeting, but it was about carjacking.
Right.
The carjackings that have escalated, more than doubled in our city and around the country. I visited Atlanta a couple of weeks ago for meetings to discuss how bad crime has gotten, and it's all centered around the opiate and substance use disorder problem that we have in our country.
But that's not being discussed.
No, it's not. It's not until treatment, for our patients, then the crime and everything else that surrounds substance use disorder is going to continue to escalate. The pandemic is only a mask. How about that? A mask, right?
Right. Right.
for what's really been going on for many years now. It started off in the poorer communities, and it became an attention getter when it started to pour over or spill over into the affluent communities in our country. And now it's recognized that we better do something about this, because grandma is sending grandson from the affluent suburbs into the poor inner city communities to buy drugs because she cannot get a refill on the prescription for her hip medication.
That's right. That's right. And that's a very good point that you bring up. Now, here in the Chicagoland area, and we have viewers from all over, but here in Chicago, and I'm sure it's true in your city, wherever you are, Barrington.
Chicago.
You're in Chicago, yes, and most of us here are, but for those who aren't, I'm sure what I'm about to say affects your community as well. Here in Chicago, we have a very affluent area called Barrington. And out in Barrington, and I was shocked when I found this out, to your point, Max, a lot of teens in the Barrington community and the surrounding communities, a lot of them are hooked on heroin. And the reason that they're hooked on heroin is because they are trying to cope or deal with mom and dad are divorcing. There's a high divorce rate in that particular area here in Chicago, extremely affluent area, but a high divorce rate. Well, their son and their daughter aren't equipped to handle that stress. And so what do? They're looking for something. And in many cases, they're getting heroin. How they're getting it, to your point, Max, how are they getting it? Well, that's a whole other conversation there, but they're getting their hands on it. And now we see an increase in opioid use in an area that is very affluent. These kids have everything that a child could possibly want in most cases, but yet they're not able to deal with the stress and the pressures of a family falling apart, and therefore they're reaching out for substances. So to your point, Max, it's not just in areas that are low income. It's an issue that permeates every socioeconomic sector of our society. Yes, Bill.
That's a problem because in Downers Grove, where I hail from, although I'm originally from Chicago, when you bring it up at the schools or even at the high school, like Downers Grove North, they like to try to tell you, no, we don't really have a problem here, but they do.
But they do.
You know, and the reason why they get like that is it's all financial. It deals with real estate value. It deals with the status of the high school in the area. For example, Downers Grove North, there's a Downers Grove North and South, but North has distinguished itself as, according to the Chicago Tribune, as the 7th best high school in the state of Illinois. And they revel in that. So they don't want to talk about it.
Right. And that's a problem, because you have schools that don't want to talk about it, especially schools in middle class, upper middle class, affluent areas, absolutely don't want to talk about it because of the stigma they feel that it's going to bring to their school and then to the community. You have parents that, and we're going to use that word again, Bill, stigma, that don't want to talk about it because they first have to then come to the realization that their child may have a problem, and how is that going to look to others in the area? So it becomes this vicious cycle, and then we never address the problem. And then we have a generation of young people growing up. If they don't overdose as a young person, they grow up thinking, well, I can just continue this on and on and on into their adult years. And unfortunately, at some point, it catches up with you. Dr. Marina, I want to bring you into the conversation, and hearing what Max and Bill are discussing around this whole stigma issue with the opioid situation, and the fact that it's not just something that's in the inner city here in Chicago, West Side or South Side, if you will, and other cities. Again, I'm sure you have similar areas. It's not just relegated to those areas. It's also in rather wealthy and affluent areas as well. What are you seeing in your practice with some of your clients and maybe even some of their kids as well?
Well, absolutely. I agree with both gentlemen. I mean, this doesn't differentiate by economic status, any different socio-demographics divisions. They don't exist. This
Right.
problem is for everybody. And I think that the problem is actually about how we see pain. Pain from the physical point of view and pain also from the emotional point of view. In the American society especially, pain is not something that we include in a normal state of our life. This is something that we try to suppress. We're not speaking about it. We're not expressing it socially. It's not culturally appropriate to talk a lot about what's bothering us, right? So we grow up trying to suppress it. And those levels of suppression, right, they create a lot of layers emotional. Then later on, we don't know how to cope. Like you mentioned, that people, go on opioids because their mom and dad are dysfunctional. Right. Not even for physical pain, but for emotional pain. And I think that emotional pain is number one reason why people do that. Because first of all, it causes the physical pain, but also because people don't know how to cope. Right. And this is the easiest thing. And it's not even though there's stigma, it's not as bad as maybe, I don't know, alcohol, because, well, it's an opioid, the doctor gave it to me, right? Right. The second thing, that physically, traditional medicine looks at symptoms, like Max said about the where we allocate money. We allocate money to symptoms and illness itself. We're not allocating money into all of those layers that happen before the symptoms. And when you look at non-traditional medical approach, right, there are 6 levels of illness. Right. 6 levels before we reach symptoms, and illness is number 5 and 6. So before that, things need to be addressed, like mindset, like our relationship with ourselves and with the world. The toxins that it creates, the energy disbalance, which is already, I have scientific instruments that measure our energy and show what's going on. So I think I agree with everybody. I think that's the bigger issue, that we don't even understand what pain is, let alone how to deal with that on a physical or emotional level.
Yeah, well, Dr. Marina is also talking about mental health.
That's right. For
one reason or another, is just sort of looked at like the wrong way. I mean, it's just, people don't take it seriously. Just to give you an example, one of the officers that was involved in the recent siege on the Capitol committed suicide. And according to his family, he was so worked up about this insurrection, whatever you want to call it. Right. And he got so worked up, and he did, in the course of defending the Capitol, he wound up knocking, taking a club and hitting a lot of heads and hurting people. Right. And he was right by the other officer that shot the woman dead. Well, his mental health was such that he killed himself. And I saw on social media comments about, well, you don't really count that death, do you? Because that occurred after the fact. And, what are we going to count? His mental health? Well, of course we're going to count his mental health. Of course,
that's, yeah. But to your point, Bill, look at not only what he did, but look at what the general population is thinking, or how they're categorizing mental health. And that's scary, because we can't deal with the opioid crisis just from the physical aspect. We have to deal with it from the emotional and mental aspect as well. But if our thinking of how mental health is defined is not correct, then we're never going to get to the root of the problem. So we hope that you are enjoying today's powerful conversation around the opioid crisis and opioid drug abuse. We're going to get back to the virtual couch and continue this conversation right after this.
Story from the Posh Girls Club, and I wanted to give you 3 tips today on how to grow organically using social media. Number one, show visuals of how you transform the customer versus like the typical before and after or product shots. For example, have you ever gone to a page and you've seen where people have they're getting their lashes done, or the before the lashes and after the lashes? That is a big no-no. Or before their hairstyle and after the hairstyle. Ideally, your customer wants to know how you transform them. And the way that you connect to that customer is by showing your dream or ideal customer what they will be doing that they want to do in the lifestyle shots. So instead of showing that before and after of the lashes, what is she going to do when she gets them done? Is she going to yoga? Is she going to church? Is she going clubbing? Is she going shopping or on a girls' night with her friends? That is how you show lifestyle versus before and after. Save the before and afters for your website. Number two, reply. So many people are so focused on getting in new customers or new audiences that they're not paying attention to the current audiences that they have. So anytime your customers reply or post on your page, go back, respond. If you've asked a question, take that response, send it to your Instagram story, screenshot it, put a boat on, put the little swipe thingy on there so that people can, like it or dislike it or however amount they like it. That creates more MSI, which is meaningful social interaction, and Instagram is here for that. Number three, talk to the people in your audience daily. Use the resources that Instagram is giving you, like your IG stories. There's usually not a day that goes by that I don't post a video in my stories. It takes me maybe 3 to 4 minutes a day, and I am constantly engaging with new audiences. Instagram has just given us Reels. You want to take advantage of these resources that they give you, especially early on before they get super crowded and everyone is using them, because you get the opportunity to leverage the algorithm. So when Instagram gives you a feature, use it. Those are my quick 3 tips on how to grow organically using social media. Definitely follow me over at the Posh Girls Club for more tips. As always, it's my goal to give you value because I want to see you win, thrive, and slay in your zone of genius. Keep hustling, babes.
Welcome back, everyone, to today's conversation on the virtual couch. And we're talking about the issue of opioid use disorder amongst adults and teens. And we're having a great conversation here, a much needed conversation that unfortunately is not in the forefront because of all the other things that we're dealing with. But ironically, it's those things that we're dealing with that is causing part of the rise in the use of opioids and the overdose statistics that are happening right now. We left off talking about mental and emotional health and the fact that many of you out there don't fully understand or fully define mental health in such a way that would allow us to have this conversation or allow us to better understand opioid addiction and any other addiction for that matter. Max, I'm going to start with you. So what Bill said before we went to break about what happened with the officer that killed himself after the insurrection on the Capitol and the response from social media that, oh, well, he's not dealing with mental health. I mean, that's something else. It's something different. It is mental health. It is a mental health impact, I should say. And just like dealing with opioids or overtaking opioids factors into that whole subject as well. You're dealing, again, primarily with adolescents. What are they saying or what are they doing? Or do they even understand mental health?
Absolutely not. They buy into the stigma that pretty much most of the country buys into, that this is just not something that you want. This is something to be ashamed of. This is something to hide. It's never something to admit. The greatest pathway to addiction, what I'm finding among our youth, is basically self-medication of emotional pain. When incidents like Columbine years ago, and Sandy Hook, the Orlando nightclub, the shootings in Las Vegas, when those incidents occur, those areas are generally inundated with counselors to come in and provide some sort of grief counseling to the families of the victims of these tragic incidents. But Tracy, what happens when grandma in the hood dies, and the young kid is, she was his only resource to go to after school for a peanut butter and jelly sandwich or a buck for an ice cream cone, and he's told, suck it up, she's gone, ain't nothing, your crying is not gonna bring her back. But there is no counseling. There are no real interventions in place for these kids. And as a result, they carry this emotional pain as best as they can. But at some point, a 14, 15, 16-year-old kid, what mom has been telling them all along is not working anymore. Okay, she's telling them, talk to the pastor maybe, or come here and tell me about it. Tell me what's going on. But that's not lessening the pain.
No.
Okay, there is a lack of encouragement to seek out professional counseling. Most of the kids that I see, and I want to say about 95% of them do have substance use disorders because they're involved in the criminal justice system.
Okay.
Out of that number, about 85% of them have mental health disorders as well. The problem is that when I send them to a facility for help, either the facility treats the substance use disorder and the kid is bouncing off the walls because he's got ADHD or bipolar disorder, or he's still suffering from the grief from the loss of a loved one. Okay. Or they'll treat those issues, but the kid is still smoking up Peru, so to speak. You know what I'm saying? Or he's still drinking the promethazine. That's basically what adolescents are using. They're using the liquid codeine, and they drop it. They call it lean. They drop Jolly Ranchers or something into it to get rid of the horrible taste. And, boom, they're on. And it doesn't take very long for it to happen. We look at the consequences of abuse, but what determines an actual substance use disorder is not what it is that you're using. It's not how much you're using. It's not even how often you use it. It's what happens when you use. Okay. And these are the things that are ignored or that are not addressed. These are the symptoms that are not addressed, okay, by offering jobs in the community, by improving the educational system in the community. Okay, these are things that have to be addressed on the individual level. At Another Chance Chicago, we're proposing to utilize what I just simply call the ABCs of substance use treatment. We're using an avatar system to give them complete anonymity. One of the biggest things that kids are known, and I've got research to prove it, to lie about is their sexual habits and their drug habits. Okay. However, to determine what the problem is or if there's a problem, we use self-report. Okay, self-report. We're asking them, we have these extensive assessment tools, and we're asking them all of these questions, assuming that they're telling the truth when actually they aren't. So what we use is the B of our ABC system is brain imaging. We actually have the technology now to whereas we can do a simple brain scan and we can see the damage that and the level that the substance use disorder has taken on the individual. The C in our process is community based. Okay. It's fine to have a kid to come into an office and sit them down in a chair and talk to them for 35, 45 minutes. Okay. That's the traditional way. Right. And as the doctor can tell you, traditional way is producing about 15 to 20% success rates. Okay, and this is, it doesn't matter what age it is. Okay, that's about the best they come up with. There's a couple that do maybe do a little bit better, but traditional treatment has long since been failing us. We believe that we need to come into the community. We need to teach them the coping skills that they need the most in the environment that they're going to use them in the most, at home, at school, in the community, sitting up waiting on next game of basketball at the basketball court, places like that where we can actually show them we can show them how to react or how to deal with the issues that they're dealing with, where they have to deal with them at. This Sunday, I'm going to say this in past, but this Sunday we got the Super Bowl coming up.
Right.
Okay. And 100,000 people are going to be packed into the stadium, maybe a few more a few less because of social distancing.
Right.
But they are not paying $5,000, $6,000, $10,000 a ticket to watch the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Kansas City Chiefs huddle. They don't mind if they're in a huddle for 35, 45 seconds. But the question is, now that you have huddled, can you now score? Right. Now that you have been in your private conversation, can you put what you talked about in action on the public playing field? And this is the approach that we have to use in our treatment, is to teach them the skills that they need, not in the locker room, but actually out on the playing field.
That's right. That's okay.
Right.
No, I thank you, Max, for that. And I could not agree more. We have to go from theory to actual application and give our kids, our teens specifically, those skills so that, again, coping skills, managing skills, mental skills, so that, again, they're better prepared to deal with all the things that we have to deal with as adults and not immediately turn to a substance. So I wholeheartely agree with that. Bill, I want to check in with you because, and for the sake of time, I want to check in with you because I want to give you an opportunity to talk about your book. You wrote a great book, fictional work, but nonetheless dealing with this issue. Right. And I want to give you just a couple minutes to set the stage for the book and why those that may be watching and maybe they're wanting to have a difficult conversation with a loved one that may or may not be abusing opioids, or maybe they suspect they are. Maybe a book like what you have can help facilitate that conversation. Can you tell us a little bit about the book and your motivation for writing it?
Sure. The name of the book is The Resurrection of Bereshi. Mm-hmm. And the book does deal with opioid addiction. However, in order for me to even get the book published, from my previous publisher that did 1968 for me and also did the children's book, mm-hmm. initially, and even an agent I have said, nobody's going to publish this because nobody wants to publish anything about the opioid problem. So when you write it, you got to get away from you've got too many statistics. I had noting that 120 people a day die from opioid addiction. Mm-hmm. Okay. Which gets back to a point that Max made, which is, the pandemic masks all of this. We still have around 100 to 110 dying supposedly every day. But you wouldn't know it because it's never discussed because all the air in the room has been taken out because of the pandemic.
Exactly.
But the reason why I wrote the book is because I went to too many funerals, and because I lost one of those two children, mm-hmm. the other one, fortunately, sort of probably is in line with what Dr. Marina's talking about, decided, obviously losing a brother, that was a wake-up call, but also she got into things like yoga, and got into things like finding peace and meditation and that sort of thing. Because frankly, she, just like her brother, were in rehab facilities, didn't do any good. I mean, it really didn't. And what we need to do more is what they're doing in Portugal, which is brought up in, one of the things I did keep in the book, which was sort of factual, is that in Portugal, they realized at the end of the 20th century, I'm talking about 1995 to about 2000, when they really started dealing with a fresh outlook. And as the 21st century came, they converted over to this fresh outlook. And now we're seeing it also done here. They decided that their addiction and recidivism rate of addiction was way too high. And so what they did was they decided that when you are absconded or arrested, or however you want to put it, by the police for your drug problem, rather than throw you in a cell and throw away the key, now many of the judges, and this is true in Portugal very much so, you get a judge who's with you for 2 years. You get also a mentor who's with you for 2 years. Now, if you don't have a trade or a skill, they make sure you learn a trade or a skill. In other words, you're gonna have a good, like a welder. That's a big thing. They're going to teach you how to weld, which pays well. And so you're going to have some sort of skill, marketable skill, by the end of your 2 years. And you're also not going to be tinged with the stigma of being a convict, but rather someone who is ill, who's being treated. And so, I hear what Max is saying, and I can't help but think, yeah, he's right. He's absolutely right, especially when you get to the C part of that equation, because people who are under addiction problems, and my daughter, who is alive and well and has overcome this, because once you get to that stage, only about 20% really survive. But my point is that she's about as honest about everything now. It's just complete honesty. That's the big thing. But you don't get that from someone who's addicted. You get stories. You get what they think you want to hear. And that's what I covered in the book, because I just went to too many funerals or too many grief groups, and I did quite a bit of research on this. And I kept hearing the same thing over and over and over.
Hello, everyone. We're taking a quick break right here away from the virtual couch conversation, because we want to make sure that you know how to get and stay connected to us, especially if you are enjoying today's conversation. If you are on Facebook, well, make sure you plug into our page, BIBO Weekly, on Facebook, as well as our group, BIBO Business Club. You can leave your comments about this show and so much more. Make sure you get plugged in there. If you are watching us on IGTV, well, we absolutely want to see and hear what you think of this episode and all of our episodes of BIBO Weekly. And if you happen to catch this on our website, BIBOweekly.com, or the Rewind Network, REEWIND.live is the website, or the Rewind Network on Roku, well, no, you can't leave your comments, but we hope that you are enjoying the programming all the same. Now let's get back over to the virtual couch as we wrap up today's powerful conversation.
My children's book, but anyway, another aside. But that was the theme of the book, which is that when you help someone, you really are helping yourself.
That's right.
So these judges, it all depends on the judge you get. But in Portugal, this is no longer a stigma for a judge he doesn't get labeled the way we do here in the U.S. as, oh, he's soft on crime, he's soft on this, and therefore voted out if he's up for a ballot. You know, he doesn't have to worry about that.
That's great. That's great. Well, definitely, Bill, before we conclude, we're going to give you an opportunity to tell everyone how they can get a hold of that book, because I know it's going to help many people, whether they're dealing with opioids or some other similar issue. It could be alcohol, it could be sex, it could be anything that you're addicted to or you're using in an unhealthy fashion. I think the story that you have and the insight that you've gained is going to help someone tremendously. So we're going to make sure you get a chance to tell us how we can get our hands on that book. And Dr. Marina, I want to come to you. Hearing what Max and Bill have talked about, would love to hear what you have to say, especially around what Bill shared, the work that they're doing in Portugal, and how it's literally changing someone mentally and emotionally so that they can better, again, we go back to that word, everyone, better cope with their issues. Max touched upon it as well, what he's doing with Another Chance Chicago. We're trying to get past the traditional ways of doing things because it's not working. And that's why we have over 20 million Americans right now that are still addicted to some form of an opioid. Dr. Marina, what do you think about all of that?
Well, I think that, thank you so much for sharing the stories, both of you. I think that you're absolutely right. The problem is that we have a stigma because we don't understand what this addiction entails on a physical level, right? Even. Why is it so addictive? Because it stimulates our endorphin producing, this system, right? That produces endorphins, the happy feel hormones that help us cope with stress and pain, because we are not taught how to do that on our own, right? And then it's interesting because, endorphins, they are also opiatic, right? They're also opioids, natural. That's why, for example, when we're stuck in relationships that are abusive, we're stuck in adrenaline endorphin cycle, and it becomes so addictive to us because we're seeking that endorphin, right, in us. But interesting that there's research now that shows why endorphins themselves are not so addictive as opioids, right? That are created,
manufactured. That's
manufactured, right? That's right. Because they actually put a kind of like a luminous protein molecule, and it was like a biosensor that helped understand what happens when we interact with endorphins and what happens when we interact with opioids. And what happens is that when opioids are introduced into our system, they affect the so-called Golgi apparatus. I don't know how to say it in English. I'm sorry, it's a Latin word. And that's the cell's main protein factory. And endorphins don't do that. And opioids affect that within the 10 seconds. So it's so fast, and it's layered onto endorphins that are already so high. That's why all of the drug addicts say there's no high that can give me, that anything in this life can give me as this thing, because it's double. It's double opioids, right? And it goes right into your system. And so if we start talking about the physiological aspect of it, we can start understanding it's not because of your strong will or weak will, or because of your bad nature, you're criminal, right? We understand the issue. But why we don't understand the issue? Because then in medical field, we're not going to be giving out the medicine so quickly, right? So there are other issues that are involved here, right? And so I think this knowledge needs to be given to the teenagers, right, Max? So they understand nothing is wrong with them. It's actually affecting their biology. And it's really hard, right? And as Bill said, all of these activities, yoga, meditation, they are proven scientifically that they actually can increase production of endorphins and, oxytocin and all of those hormones that make us feel good. And that's why giving our kids and our community more of those activities that teach them how to We can affect our own biology in the most amazing way without the drugs. And I think that that's something that we need to talk about.
Well, I'll tell you, Dr. Marina, I don't have an opioid addiction, but I'm telling you, I'm fired up just listening to you because I want whatever you're doing to feel good naturally, right? Just to feel good, to be healthy, to have a healthy mindset. You don't have to be on an opioid and in a situation where you're looking for recovery to take advantage of what Dr. Marina has just said. But I do agree with you, Marina, that education, which you just told us, I guarantee 95% of those who are watching us right now had no clue.
No,
not at all. And the fact that they're hopefully watching this and learning it here is great. But look at all the people that may not see this here. So what you're saying, I absolutely agree with you. I agree with all of you. It needs to be more mainstream education. And again, adults need it, but our teens, our children need it even more. So the work that you're doing, Dr. Marina, I thank you so much for, and thank you for interjecting that, because there is a science to this that most people aren't educated about. We're too busy attacking the result, and we're not being proactive and attacking it from more of a proactive instead of reactive state. So everyone, I tell you, I wish we had another 3 hours to continue this much needed conversation. Unfortunately, we don't, but I'm going to give each of our great panelists here an opportunity to tell you very quickly how you can reach them if you want to talk to any of them about this issue or some similar issue. And hopefully we can do a part 2 to this conversation, because it's very much needed today, especially going through a pandemic. Folks are stressed out. They're not coping well, and they're trying to find a solution. And unfortunately, a lot of individuals, whether you're an adult, whether you're a teen, whether you're a business owner, folks are looking for relief. And unfortunately, that has been caused this increase in opioid drug overuse. Max, I'll start with you. Congratulations on the work that you're doing with Another Chance Chicago, a very much needed work. How can someone watching this right now reach out to you, get involved, or find out more information for their teen, or maybe they just want to get involved with your initiative?
Sure. Our website is anotherchancechicago.org. And we're also, excuse me, do also have a Twitter page, which is Night 10, KNIGHT, and the number 10, Max. And that's my Twitter handle, and I'm also on Instagram at Max Knighton. We are currently working with the Harris School of Public Policy from the University of Chicago to help to get things really, really going. Our project has been we have inquiries from all over the country to get this project in their cities because of the ABC system, the avatar system, which gives total anonymity to those who are participating in the counseling sessions. It's a really highly technological system developed by Dick Dillon out of St. Louis. The brain imaging, which has been around for over a decade, but is not available in the impoverished communities where this crisis really, really is taking toll. And of course, the community-based approach in bringing the counseling and the coping mechanisms to the adolescents right where they need them the most. Again, we can be reached. We are on Twitter, and my email address is max@anotherchancechicago.org.
Fantastic. Well, I applaud you, Max, for the work that you're doing. Thank you so much for being here with us on the virtual couch. Truly appreciate you, what you're doing, and thank you for sharing such valuable information, especially as it relates to our young people.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Dr. Marina, you're doing a great work over there with hypnotherapy, with all sorts of other therapies to give individuals an alternative to pain meds or some other drug, if you will. How can someone who's watching us right now reach out to you if they're interested in just getting their mind and their body in a healthier state, whether or not they have an opioid addiction or not? How can they reach you?
Very easy. Everything is on my website, all of my social handles and all of my emails. So the website is www.dr, like for doctor, drmarinacostina with a K.com.
Fantastic.
And you can visit my Ravenous Light Healing Center here in Chicago.
Texas, California. I even had emails coming in from London, and as a critic in London did a review of the book, and it was actually told from the vantage point of a dog, because the publisher wanted humor. Now, how can you be humorous in a subject like this? However, like anything, you can find a certain amount of humor, especially when the dog is telling the story. So it chronicles the problems of addiction, but the main reason why I wrote the book is to combat the stigma that goes with drug addiction.
Yeah. Well, I thank you so much for stepping out on faith to do that, to share your story, to share it through, again, like you said, the eyes of a dog, just to add a little bit of levity to this subject, because it's a deep subject. It's a tough subject. Thank you, Marina, Max, Bill, your dogs, for being obedient. All of us are dealing with pets at home. Thank you. And thank you all again out there for watching us this week. What do I always say? In the meantime, until we meet again, stay safe, stay healthy, but most of all, stay blessed. And we'll see you soon.